Welcome to this tutorial on the Spatiometrics Revit workflow. In this video, we'll cover everything you need to know to get started uploading and analyzing your plans on Spatio. Spatiometrics is a design analytics engine that automatically analyzes your floor plans. In Spatio, you can create custom data visualization dashboards without writing any code. You can use Spatio at any phase of design, kicking off pre-design or programming by creating benchmarks from past projects, or you can track metrics like visibility and views during schematic design to compare design options with your clients, or run design criteria checks to make sure you're meeting code requirements during design development. In this video, we'll discuss how to get up and running with our Revit plugin, which makes it quick and easy to run your model through Spatio's analyses. We'll go over three main steps for submitting your model for analysis. The first is preparing your Revit model to make sure that it has the necessary inputs. The second is creating and editing Spatio geometry, which are the inputs for your analyses. And the third is submitting your Spatio geometry for analysis. Once your plan has been analyzed, you'll be able to create presentations and view the analysis data in your dashboard. To get started, download the installer, which is available in the link in the description below. Be sure to close out of Revit if you have it open, and double-click on the downloaded file to unzip it. Once the file is unzipped, double-click on it to start the installation. If you see a message like this, just click More Info, and then Run Anyway. Go through the prompts to install the software. The default location should work fine. And once the installation is complete, open Revit. If you see a message like this, just click Always Load. And then you should be good to go. Send us a note at support@spatiometrics.com if you run into any trouble getting set up, and we'll be happy to help. Once everything's installed, you should see a Spatiometrics tab up in your ribbon, and you can click on the Spatio Exporter button to open up this side window. In order to use the plugin, you'll need a Spatio account, and so if you don't already have one, you can sign up for a free one using this link, which we'll also include in the description below. So I'll log in using my Spatio credentials. When we go through the process, there are a few things that we can do to our Revit model to make the process go smoother. And really, those things are about making sure that different elements show up in the Revit model so that the plugin knows how to find and extract them. So we'll talk through a few of those Revit inputs. The first is room outlines. Spatio reads the outlines, room types, and names of any room element that you place in the model. Using Revit room elements works great because it really automates the process, but you can also use filled regions instead. The second set is walls, windows, and doors. If you include these in the model, the plugin will automatically generate visual barriers for you by extracting the center lines from walls and cutting out openings for windows and doors. These visual barriers will affect visibility analyses like window access, privacy, and views. Alternatively, you can create visual barriers from other inputs like detail lines, column bounding boxes, and room outlines. Once you're satisfied that your model has all the inputs that you need, the next step is to create a callout view that will tell the analysis what exactly in the floor plan to analyze. Every time you submit an analysis from Revit, you do so by creating a callout view. There's essentially a one-to-one relationship between a callout view in Revit and a plan on your dashboard. So we'll go up to the View tab, click on View, click on Callout, and I'll make sure that I've selected the floor plan callout rather than the detailed view, just to make sure that it shows up over here in the browser. And I'll drag it like this to create a view that captures either the full plan or the part of the plan that we want to analyze. As a quick note, currently Spatio supports up to 45,000 square feet. So this is a great way if you have a larger plan to scope it down, although in the future we hope to support larger floor plans. We wouldn't have any problems if we made the callout view large enough to take in the full plan and analyze the full thing, but for the sake of this tutorial, we'll analyze just a portion, just so you can see how that works. Another thing to note is that the plugin will include the full boundary of any room that's at least partially within the callout view, so you can always crop them down manually if you'd like, if they extend outside of the callout view. Once you're satisfied with the cropping, you can right-click on the view and then go to that view. You can also access the views just through this drop-down here. So now that the model is ready, we'll use the plugin to extract the Revit geometry and turn it into Spatio geometry, which will be used for the analysis. There are a few settings that we can control as we're doing it. The first is the circulation room types. This is going to look through all the different room objects in the view and let the plugin know which ones to create travel paths for. By default, we pre-populate these lists with some common room types like corridors and stairwells, but you can override them with whatever is relevant for your plan. These are case sensitive, so make sure to take that into account when you're making your selection. In this case, we only have corridors and don't have stairwells, so I'll remove the stairwells from the list. The other thing is the objects and families dropdown. And so this is going to look through your model and find any elements that are objects and families that you want to include for travel distances or item counts. In this case, it's just the sinks, but you can select any object in your model that you want. Things like fire extinguishers for life safety requirements, or things like desks or chairs if you're working on an office. If you do use any of the non-standard room outline or visual barrier source types, like filled regions or model lines, you can adjust those settings at the bottom where it says Advanced Settings. Once you're satisfied with your selection, you can click Next. In the background, the plugin is finding all of the relevant Revit geometry and converting it into the Spatio geometry that'll be used as the inputs for the analysis. This can take a few seconds to complete, so just hang tight. Once the process is complete, it'll load the geometry into the view, and you'll be able to make any edits that you want to. So you'll see here that an editor panel comes up, and this is what lets you modify and really fine-tune any of the analysis inputs before you submit. You can feel free to just click Next and move on to the next step without editing, but if you want a little bit more control, you can go through this process and edit it. So we'll walk through these layer by layer to just talk through what they are and how to make any changes. The first is underlay reference. This is not actually used in your analysis. It's just here as an underlay for as you're drafting. So I'll just go ahead and turn that off for now. The next is the room outlines, which are really the primary elements that get visualized in the app and are the basis for every analysis. So I'll just toggle that on and off so you can see what those are. For any of these, you can edit them by just clicking on them, and they're really just Revit annotation elements. So you can do anything that you normally would with them, like edit the boundary and create a hole. If you click on this, you'll also be able to see on the Properties panel that it's a Spatio room annotation object. And it has a few different data elements that are associated with it. So the display name is great for annotating room names or numbers, the department that's in it, and then the Spatio type. This is how you can tell the analyses what kind of room it is, like a corridor or a conference room or a bedroom. In this case, it's just called room by default, but let me call it a patient room so that it can be like the others. If you want to add in a new room type, you can do so by clicking the Add button and then drawing using the standard tools up here. In this case, I need to click on Place on Work Plane. And then once I do that, I should be able to draw it here. I can click Modify again just to X out of that. And then for any new geometry that you create, you need to be sure to add in the Spatio type so that the analysis knows what to do with it. So I'm just going to call this new type and click Apply. So that's room outlines. The next thing is circulation paths. And you can see that because we selected corridors as our input circulation types in the previous step, that we got these pre-populated circulation paths here. It does its best to find the circulation paths, but you can always override them or edit them if you want to clean them up. Or do things like add in shortcuts or take out paths that you don't actually want people to walk on. So I'll just clean these up. These ones didn't quite meet. It is important to make sure that the lines meet right at their endpoints, so there's a continuous point of travel. For things like this, you don't really need to worry about cleaning them up. It'll always find the shortest path, so if you have extra bits, it's not gonna show up in the app. I'll turn off these room outlines and the circulation paths so that we can see some of these other things. The visual barriers are what are used for the visibility analyses. So it tells the analysis engine how to calculate things like visual connectivity, views, window access, and there are these cyan lines here. You can see that it's automatically cut out holes for doors and windows, and you can delete them if you want to open it up more, or if it didn't quite read things the way that you wanted it to. And just like any of the other layers, you can add to it if you want as well. The next ones are point-based inputs, and so these are locations, doors, and destination overrides. So on the locations, we can see that where we had sinks, these got pulled in automatically. We can see that the Spatio type is labeled the same as the family type, and you can always override that if you want to. Or if you want to add in new locations, so like say you have a piece of furniture like a chair, you can just add it in on that layer. And then go in and add the type to it as well, just so we can call this a chair. Doors are used to support the travel distance analyses, and so by default, the circulation path will automatically be generated from the center of a room to the nearest circulation path when the analysis runs, and it'll draw the shortest line from the center point to this path. But if you add in a door, it'll make sure that the path goes through that door instead. So those are door points. You can also add in destination overrides. So by default, travel distances are calculated to the geometric center of the room. But if you add in something at the furthest point of the room, for instance, you can calculate egress distances. And so in this room, the travel path should be calculated from this destination override to the door, and then to the primary circulation path there. The building outlines aren't actually used in the analysis. It's this orange line here. And feel free to add it in or leave it out, but when you do add it in, it's going to show up in the app here as this kind of like light gray outline. And finally, the views are what are used to calculate the view analysis in the app. And so these are the only things that aren't generated by default, and you can go in and add them by clicking the Add button. And it'll just draw in a line like this. It's okay if they're a bit messy. And if you leave them out, that's fine. The analyses will still run, you just won't get the view analysis. We can see I'm going outside of the callout, so if I turn the underlay reference back on, we can see that the callout view is a little bit narrower than that. I'm just going to expand it a bit to make sure that we capture everything that we want to be included in the analysis. And then for these views, we do need to make sure that we assign a view type for each of them. If I don't, this will give me a little warning saying that the Spatio type is missing. And so I can just select these and say, maybe have a view type of greenery, and then maybe these two are parking. A couple of other tricks that can make this process a little bit easier. If you're not familiar with the select options, you can always click here and then check or uncheck the select pinned items. This can be really useful if you want to see the underlay while you're editing, but don't want to accidentally make any changes to it. And any of these analysis inputs can also be copied and pasted. So if you have multiple callout views and you want to make some custom changes, and then you want to bring them into this other view, you can always just copy and paste. Their properties will be copied over with them too. So then, once you're satisfied with the inputs, you can click on Next, which will bring you to the next screen. If you've used our Rhino workflow, you'll be familiar with these inputs. It's the exact same form. But this is essentially saying, now that we have the Spatio geometry, how do we want to analyze the model? You can set those settings here. So I'm going to set the analysis grid size to draft. That just means that the heat map analyses will have a higher or a lower resolution so that it runs a little bit quicker. So for our visual connectivity analyses, so supervision and privacy, for every square foot in the plan, we'll calculate how visually connected that space is with any room that you've included here. So for privacy, often people will use things like the corridor. And so this is going to say, okay, from this point, how much of the corridor can I see? And then for supervision, in the case of hospitals, this is really useful for calculating, can a nurse see into a patient room from every given point? And so it'll say for every space in this plan, how much nurse station can we see, or how much in our nurse station can see it. And so in this case, I'll just select nurse station. This list is made up of all the room types in spatio geometry, so you'll see the options that are specific to your plan. Once you're ready to go, just click Submit, and your analysis inputs will be uploaded to your dashboard and submitted for analysis. You'll see progress updates here, and once it's complete, you'll see that pop up here. I'll speed this process up for the tutorial, but it'll take anywhere from around 1 to 10 minutes to run, depending on the size of the plan and the analysis grid resolution that you choose. You can navigate to the Spatiometrics tab and go to the Spatio dashboard to open it up in your web browser. So we can see here that we have a new analysis that came in from Revit, and I'll go ahead and click on that to see the analysis results. So we can see this, these edits to the rooms that we made. We have our chair, our sink, travel analyses. Everything should be good to go in here. So from this point, you're really free to use the analysis as is or to iterate and make adjustments and resubmit. If you do decide to make edits to the Revit geometry and submit again, there are a few different ways that you can do that. One is that you can just start from scratch with a clean callout view. The other is that you can use this duplicate and edit button, which will essentially create a copy of your callout view with all of the same spatio geometry already copied over so that you can make any tweaks that you want. So if you just want to remove this room or delete this shortcut, you can do that. Or if you want to change any of the analysis settings, you can do that. And then just click Submit it again for analysis. Once the analysis is submitted, you really don't need these callout views anymore. So you're free to delete them from your Revit file. Or if you think that you might want to come back and run the analyses again later, you can keep them in the model and save them. Because all of the spatio geometry is just annotation elements, it'll be specific to each individual callout view and shouldn't affect the rest of your model. And that's really the full process. When you're done, you can create custom metrics, custom scorecards, and make comparison views all in the dashboard. We have a quick tutorial on that as well, which we'll link in the description below if you want more details on getting started with that. So that should really be everything you need to know to get started using the Revit plugin. As always, we would love to hear your feedback, and if we can help with anything as you're going through the process, if you have any questions, if you run into any bugs, feel free to send us an email at support@spatiometrics.com, and we'll be happy to help out. Thanks for watching.